All right, so I'm going to take it down the home stretch because you need some practical things here too, right? It's not supposed to be spooky and weird. It's supposed to be, we're made in the image of God. So we're starting from a base of being made in his image. Sin tilted us, right? You will not surely die, the devil said to Adam and Eve in the garden. And they didn't die when they ate the fruit, but they did bring death into the garden. So we're struggling against something God never wanted us to have. He didn't want death. He wanted us to have life eternal. And when he comes back, we are going to have life eternal. So the very same thing, that beautiful garden that Adam and Eve had, we have when he comes back. That's a really good thing to remember, to maintain your hope. So what should we do? We have two choices according to Paul in Galatians 6 here. He says, don't be deceived. God is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, all of your transactions, good and bad, whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. For he who sows to his what? His flesh will of the flesh reap corruption. But he who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life. There's your two transactions. There's your godly and ungodly. I want life, then I execute godly transactions. I learn what the Word says. I don't just read it, I study it. I show myself approved as somebody who knows the Word, so that when some counterfeit argument comes along, I can recognize it right away. No, that truth doesn't line up with the Word of God, and this is my ultimate truth. But when we're not educated in the Word, we can be fooled very easily. So nobody can do that for you. But here's a different angle. I can either sow to my flesh or I can sow to my spirit. So you have that little handout that I gave you in your bulletin. Everybody get a bulletin today and get that little handout. All right, so there should be a one-pager in there that you were given. You could share it if you're with somebody and you didn't get one, but this is easy. You can pull this down right off of the web. It's free and easy. It's a good place to start. And what does it say at the top? Who am I? And then I have a choice. On the left side, it says I could be an orphan. Or on the right side, it says I could be a child of God. Which do you want to be? I want to be a child of God. So as we're thinking about where we should start digging, one of the things you can look at is what are some of the symptoms of my life? How am I behaving? Am I behaving like a child of God, or am I behaving like an orphan? And this is not meant to defile anybody here who's an orphan. Could be somebody here who's an orphan, right? That in itself is not a condition. If you're saved, you're a child of God. That's it. But then there's areas in our lives where we're not modeling what it would really be like to be a child of God. We're modeling what it's like to have an orphan spirit. And we don't want to have that orphan spirit because guess who the chief orphan is? Satan. He got kicked out. He thought he could exalt himself above the Lord. He was one of the archangels in heaven and was evicted because of his pride. So look, you're not an orphan. You're a child of God. If somebody says, who are you? Don't say, I'm an accountant. An accountant is what you do. It's not who you are, right? Who are you? I'm a son of the living God. I'm a daughter of the living God. That's the best answer you can give. Well, but you seem to have so many flaws in your life. I know, it's amazing, and he still loves me anyway. That's not what an orphan would say. That's what a child says. Look, man, John F. Kennedy, when he was president, his son was little, and he would have important dignitaries in his office, but if his son ran in and jumped up on his lap, boom, didn't matter who was there. This is my son. This is my son. Big difference of being an orphan and thinking you have to earn it. I won't bother you with all the different levels there. But the way I gave it to you is in a way that you can actually just, pray over it and spend some time with the Lord and look at each one of those questions. Because the band in the middle is the behavior. Above is the orphan action. Below the band is what a child would do. Each one of those bands is a different action. So you can write in the box. You could say, boy, I'm sure tilting towards orphan on this one. Or no, God give me great insight on that one. How do I get my identity? By what I do or by knowing who I am? An orphan would say by what I do. because that's the only way I can get a reputation. It's interesting that I had that vision during worship today of hands digging in dirt and finding a box and seeing a new birth certificate with the right name on it. And the title is Digging. Oh, Lauren Anello had a birth certificate with her today. See, I love that. That's so cool, isn't it? A new identity. I just love it. See, that's how God works. See? So now look, here's how you can look at this sheet that I gave you. You could say, am I sowing to my flesh or am I sowing to the Spirit? And these are difficult questions to ask. It's like, really? Can't I just go get root canal right now? Like, why do I have to do this? Because the truth hurts, right? And nobody really wants to deal with it, but it hurts more to live in a lie. So, man, there's all these great sayings. One of them, the pain of discipline is better than the pain of regret. Because you don't want to live the next 10 years of your life avoiding stuff. Get to the root. Start living an abundant life now. Even if it requires a little pain, no gain. Even the world knows that. So, yeah, okay, it might hurt a little bit. I'm acting like an orphan in this area. But look, there's a lot of questions, right? You can just look at each one of them and say, where am I coming in? Where am I falling on the line here? More like an orphan or more like a child? A little bit of both? No, really extreme one way or the other. Boy, the Lord will show you. He's really good at that when you ask. So here's something that the Sanfords wrote in their book on generational curses. This is from a chapter in their book called Transforming the Inner Man. And this is something you could apply in a general sense. He says, we look for recurrent patterns, both of blessing and of harm. Sometimes divorce runs rampant. One man came from ministry who was the result of his mother's third of 5 marriages. His mother was one of 12 children. His father was one of 12. Among all those relatives, not one had been married only once. Anybody doing the math right now? So 12 children on the mother's side, all got married. All 12 got divorced more than once. 12 children on the father's side, all got married, all got divorced more than once. What's the family reunion looking like? Can't keep track of it all. Step this, step that, step this. Look, and again, I'm not meaning to try to defile anybody here because many people in the room are in a situation like that. And in the marriage counseling I've done for really like 35 years. I've been pastoring here for 20, but even prior, we were involved in marriage counseling. And you try to help the bride and groom, especially if they're younger people, to anticipate some of the things that they're going to go through. And over the last several years, so many more of the people that I'm counseling with have multiple families and stepfathers and stepmothers. And you know, we really have to talk through a lot of those things because, again, I'm not meaning to get off on that tangent, but whose wedding is it? The 2 people getting married. And just because there might be drama because people haven't seen each other in a while and they weren't nice to each other the last time they saw each other doesn't mean it's going to ruin your wedding, right? Because God's in charge of this thing. Now, we have to respect everybody, but you can really pray hard, and we've seen this happen. You pray hard into it, and amazingly, everybody gets along at the wedding. Because there's a call to dignity on the heart of a person to say, I love my child, even though we didn't always see eye to eye, and I'm not going to ruin their day by just some petty spat that I had with my former husband or my former wife. You see how it can work? But when you see it as a target, now you have something that you can pray against in advance. Okay, so among all those relatives, not one had been married only once. Think there's a pattern? Think there might be a susceptibility here to thinking that's the only thing that's normal? You don't consciously think of it, then you get married, and your only thing of normal is, well, we're going to have to get divorced because everybody else I knew in my family, they all got divorced. No, that's not normal. This is normal. You make a covenant with that person till death do us part, and not because Trisha killed me. Here's another quote from them, and I'm almost done. It says, whenever men will let Jesus reap the dire effects of law through forgiveness and atonement of the cross, the thing gets revealed, and now you have to bring it to the cross. And I forgive, Lord, really hard. Okay, practically speaking, there's going to be anger coming up inside. Why me? How come you couldn't have been better? Why did you favor my brother or my sister? There's so many ways this can play itself out. No, I'm not going to be prideful. I'm not going to tell the Lord how to fix me. If I could have got fixed on my own, I wouldn't need to be in this deliverance session, remember? So whatever you say, Lord, I'm just going to humbly accept it and just forgive and not hold them up to ridicule and not wish them badly, because that's a tool of the enemy, isn't it? God can prevent tragedy if you're willing to do that forgiveness, it says. But whenever men will not repent and by that fail to give God access to the situation, then they have to reap generation to generation. Whatever is sown, however unfair that might seem to the newer children, the unborn, and however much our loving God doesn't want that to happen, there's a law in operation of sowing and reaping, and it's got to be broken.